أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Plagiarism, how to avoid it. In this session, we are going to talk about plagiarism and how to avoid plagiarism in your own paper or thesis. This session is based on APA Publication Manual 7th edition. So what is the big mistake that we make? We do paraphrasing as we go along or as we are writing our paper. So whenever we are copying stuff, maybe from some other paper or thesis, we start paraphrasing as we go. I think, to my knowledge, this is one of the biggest mistakes. Now, why is this a big mistake? Now, you do not paraphrase as you write your text. Why? You may not have the necessary understanding of the subject matter. You may have just started your research on the subject, and you are not well acquainted with the topic or the concept. So, you are not in a position to paraphrase. It's very important that you read as much as possible to get the adequate knowledge of the subject matter. You may not have the required vocabulary, and you will build your vocabulary as you read. You haven't read enough, so you haven't learned enough about the topic. You do not know about the arrangement of the concepts. You do not know how the flow and the structure of the paper should be. Now, if you're new to research, you do not yet know about the structure and format of your paper or thesis. Now, there are two common types of plagiarism: improper use of someone else's words and improper use of someone else's ideas. Now, both these forms of plagiarism, they involve using someone else's words or ideas without appropriately acknowledging the author or source. Now, this does not mean that if you appropriately acknowledge the source and words, this is not plagiarism. Now, there are two critical parts of plagiarism or avoiding plagiarism. One is you have to acknowledge the source, and second is you have to properly paraphrase the literature that you have copied. Now, word plagiarism occurs when you use author's exact words or phrases without quotation marks. Now, whenever possible, paraphrase sources in your own words rather than directly quoting them. Now, paraphrasing helps you synthesize ideas and integrate them into the context of your own paper. Now, again, this is very important that in order to avoid plagiarism, sometimes you are quoting too much in quotation marks. Now, obviously, that does not help in the longer run, because then your own idea, your own write-up is lost. And then obviously your thesis or paper will be rejected. So you have to synthesize the ideas, make them more clearer by rephrasing it. And avoid quotation marks. Obviously they should not be over a limit that is advised by your university. Using direct quotes sparingly and only when it is important to reproduce both what was said and how it was said. Now, sometimes, obviously, you will have to use the direct quotes, but it should not be over a certain limit. Now, as far as I remember, it's something less than 10%. If you use another author's words directly, even your own words from the previous paper, you must use quotation mark. Now, self-plagiarism here obviously is not allowed as well. So you should use quotation marks. Along with the page number, there is a video on the website that guides on in-text citation using APA style. Now, this will tell the readers these are not your own original words. Now, the most blatant form of word plagiarism occurs when students copy an author's exact words and knowingly do not use quotation marks or include an in-text citation. Now, a more common type of word plagiarism is when students think they can use an author's exact or very similar words and include only an in-text citation, just as I described earlier. The percentage will not go down if you just give or provide an in-text citation and a full reference at the end. You will have to properly paraphrase the text. The citation gives the author the credit for the ideas, but the quotation marks give the authors credit for the wording of the idea as well. Again, do not just put in quotations as you go along, because obviously you will have to use them sparingly. If you use an author's exact words, quotation marks and location information must accompany in-text citation, that is, you must mention the page number. Another common type of word plagiarism occurs when the student mistakenly think they have paraphrased an author's words because they added or removed a few words or maybe used a few synonyms. Now this is called patch writing. If your wording had a similar sentence structure and uses the same words and phrases of the original author, you are patch writing. See the example now. Now look at this here. In most cases, the words are more or less similar. In order to avoid this situation, what you need to do is you need to understand the concept of that passage and try to rewrite it in your own words. Obviously, yes, you will use synonyms. But try to provide the input in your own words. And this is only possible if you understand the concept. We are going to look into some tips as well. Avoiding word plagiarism. It is important to paraphrase other authors' work in your own words. When reading a description of an idea or study, it can be hard to represent the idea or finding as clearly as the author did without plagiarizing. Now, this is quite possible, obviously. It is difficult to catch the whole concept and put it in your own words without plagiarizing. You might miss critical information. The easiest way to avoid repeating sentence structure or lifting phrases is to read a section of a work and then put the work down and write notes in your own words. Try to understand the gist of that particular sentence, paragraph, or phrase. Try to put it in your own words. Read about it a bit more. Read about it from other sources as well, so that you can create your own idea. You can create your own phrase or sentence. As a general rule, paraphrase when taking notes on the source. Do not write the author's words verbatim without putting them in quotation marks and including the source location in your notes. Now, even when you are taking notes, try to make sure that you are putting in quotation marks and putting in the information that where you took it from. Always attribute every idea, fact, or finding you put in your paper when you write it. Now, do not copy ideas, phrases, sentences without attributing them to the original source. Idea plagiarism. Idea plagiarism occurs when you present an idea from another source without citing the author and year. Anytime you write about a concept or idea in a paper without including an in-text citation or clearly linking it to previous sentence containing an in-text citation, you are claiming the idea as your own. If it is not, this is plagiarism. If you are not attributing the idea to the original source, this is plagiarism. Now, the most blatant form of idea plagiarism occurs when the students see a good argument or idea in a paper and then represent that argument or idea as their own. A more common form of idea plagiarism is when students cite a source incorrectly because they do not follow proper in-text citation guidelines. Now, you need to understand what is in-text citation and how it should be done. Now, sometimes what happens is we do mention some citations at the start of the paragraph, and then we are copying ideas from here and there and from different papers without attributing the text to the particular author. Now, you need to learn about in-text citation. It's very important to avoid plagiarism. For example, they may write a whole paragraph about a study and then cite the study authors and year in the last sentence in parentheses, thinking that citation covers the previous sentences. Now, the idea may have come, or rather the ideas in that one paragraph may have come from different sources. Now, in that case, you will have to provide multiple citations in that paragraph. Instead, the in-text citation should appear at the beginning of the paraphrased passage to establish its origin at the outset. Another common form of idea plagiarism is when students remember a fact they learned in the class and put it in their paper without citing it, or when they write about a fact they have heard somewhere and mistakenly assume that it is common knowledge. Now, you should avoid this as well. Now, when we are writing paper, obviously we need to properly refer to the ideas that we are presenting in the paper. Something that you have heard somewhere may not be factual. Now you need to go back to the literature and find the source. Avoiding idea plagiarism. To avoid idea plagiarism, use signal phrases. For example, I believe that, in my opinion. To designate your own idea. Now, if it is your own idea, use these phrases. Or include an in-text citation to the source to signal someone else's idea. Now, most important, always search the literature to find a source for any ideas, facts, or findings that you put in your paper. Now, there are some more important tips. Now, read the sentence paragraph to be rephrased or paraphrased. Understand what is written and put it in your own words. Now, you have to read it again and again to be able to put it in your own words. Compare it with your original source and make sure that you haven't missed anything important. You may use a software, but be very cautious about it. Paraphrasing or rephrasing yourself will help you understand the concepts in more depth. I recommend avoiding the software. Do not copy from a single source. Try to search literature from multiple sources. Now, for example, let's say you've got a phrase or a paragraph or a sentence from one particular source. Now, what you need to do is, when you are paraphrasing that particular source, try to look for similar ideas presented by other authors. Now, this will strengthen your literature because now you are quoting multiple sources. And again, your knowledge, your ability to use different vocabulary to avoid plagiarism will obviously increase as well. Try to develop linkages between sentences that are copied from different sources. This will also help in reducing plagiarism. And finally, paraphrase or rephrase right at the end. This is what I suggest and this is what I recommend. Scholars or your own supervisor or your teacher may disagree, but this is my own way of doing or writing my studies. Again, if you want to know more, this is the reference and this is the guide that has been provided by APA. The link will be shared in the description. Thank you very much.